After the riots, Mayor Whitman promised big changes to the well-being of Muppets in Sesame Street. However, what they saw instead was a drastic rise in the homeless population after an increase in taxes to pay for these supposed changes. Many Muppets found themselves living paycheck to paycheck, and ultimately unable to sustain life in this once beautiful city. The hardships led to an increase in drug use, and soon the streets were filled with addicts from corner to corner. Residents of Sesame Street just had to accept living in what was essentially an open-air drug market. On top of this, Mayor Whitman secretly defunded all the public programs meant to help those with mental health issues, and so these individuals found themselves living on the streets as well, seemingly left to rot. With no access to treatment or medication, there was an increase in crime and random violent attacks against the residents. This uptick in violence and taxes would lead to astronomical inflation, and many businesses found themselves having to close their doors for good. Most shocking of all was the amount of entire families that had lost their home and found themselves contributing to the ever-growing crisis around them. Nothing could be farther from the wholesomeness this place once represented. And while there are those that are happy to help others in need, for the most part they were seen and treated as a nuisance. Police criminalized them, and what little rights they had left seemed to be completely stripped away, along with their jobs and public resources. Homeless encampments spread like wildfire, and there seemed to be nowhere in the inner city where rows of tents didn't fill whatever free space they could find. These encampments were not only unsightly but hazardous as well, as outbreaks of tuberculosis were soon becoming commonplace for the residents of Sesame Street. And yet, there were some areas of the city that were not suddenly falling into a downward spiral of loss and despair. In fact, the exact opposite was happening in these areas, and those within a certain income bracket saw an increase in their quality of life. Many have speculated that this rising of luxury comes as a direct result of a tax cut introduced by Mayor Whitman, made available only to what many would consider Sesame Street's upper class. With this decrease of taxes for the elite and increase of taxes for the middle and lower classes, it was clear that the tips were scaled to benefit the wealthiest individuals while the rest of society was bled dry and left to crumble. With most of the population having to scavenge to survive while a select few get to live like royalty, one can only wonder if things are even worse now as a result of the protests which were meant to fix the inequality the Muppets felt as a whole but now feel within each other. So then, what does the future hold for the once vibrant Sesame Street? Only one thing is for certain, that unless there is major change, things will only continue to get worse for the city and its hardest working residents, while the most well-off, including the likes of Mayor Whitman, will continue to profit. Perhaps the struggle for Muppet equality is not only not yet over, but is in fact only just now getting started.